What? That's good. I make sure I get a copy.
I think the Singleton's won't be here. You're not? No, you said yes. You ready? You wanna do Cornerstone first? Yeah.
Okay, hold on. I'm not ready.
All right.
You want one? I got one. I got one. Here you go.
All right, we're gonna bring the Personnel and Finance Committee meeting to order. First thing on the agenda tonight, make a couple changes. You're gonna have a presentation by Cornerstone Alliance.
Let me do a quick introduction, if I may.
City Manager.
Mr. Chair, we have been talking about the youth and bringing them up the right way and getting them involved.
Mm-hmm.
This project came to us from one of the youth of Benton Harbor, Mr. Isom. And I'm gonna let Mr. Isom introduce the people.
Okay.
Good evening. A few months back over the summer, I had the privilege of meeting with Ross Fisher from City Plumbing and Heating, as well as Tom Hogan from Avian Building Solutions. And they came to me to present a program that really spoke to the infrastructure needs in the area. And they were asking me, which local community do you see that stands to benefit from something like this? And the immediate answer that came to my mind was Benton Harbor. So I'm bringing them to you today to hopefully speak to some of the infrastructure needs in the city. So,
thank you.
And I want to just say, Tracy and I met them about 2 hours ago or so. And this was such a compelling presentation, we had to put it on the agenda today.
Okay.
turn it over to you.
I'll let you get this going.
Okay.
We figured out all our technical issues 2 hours ago, so this should go smoothly.
Okay.
I appreciate you fitting this into the schedule. We're trying to keep it short and brief for you guys. I know you got some big packets to get through.
Yeah, we're not gonna, we're gonna try not to take up your entire evening or even a part of it. Okay, where are we? You wanna-
Oh, we need your name. You just state your name.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm Tom Logan. I'm with ABM Industries and
I'm Scott Mason.
of ABM Industries. So again, thank you. We're honored to be here. We do have a PowerPoint that we're, oh, there we go. Yeah, I think so. So anyway, it's amazing how these projects, start out. It all started with a conversation with Cameron and I and Ross, and what can we do to help these communities? And what we've been able to do nationwide, especially in Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, is we've been able to look at the budgets, the current budgets of the city, look for waste dollars in both operations, maintenance, energy, and monetize those and use that money to do projects. So these projects are self-funding projects. That's what they're called in the industry. We operate under a piece of legislation that's both Michigan-based legislation, or we can operate under federal legislation that allows us as collaboratively put a project together without affecting your current budget. That means what we do is we look at your current budget and we monetize those inefficiencies, redirect that money to fixing things, which saves money, enough money to do the project. So we do have a, back up there. So anyway, a lot of communities, a tremendous amount of communities have been able to take care of this. As a matter of fact, I talked to one of my one of the guys I had done a project with back in 2008, same size city, same size issues, around 9,000 folks. It was a situation where they were about $500,000 underneath or underwater is their budget. We went in and did about a $4 million project with them, replaced all their water meters and everything else. They had a 40% loss. Once we fixed the problem, they had a $500,000 a year later in their budget. So now they've been draining that budget, so they don't have a $500,000 in it, but every year they put a $500,000 back into their budget from that project. So it's really turned around the dynamics of the city. It's allowed them to put new water lines in, it's allowed them to put new fire hydrants in, it's allowed them to put, or buy new police cars and Packer trucks for their trash. It's allowed them to do everything. So we've done 2 other projects since then with them, but they're willing to talk to you, tell you how they did it. But we just did a project over in St. Joe. St. Joe Library broke, didn't have any money. Underwater, we're doing about a $1.7 million project. Doesn't cost them anything, no money out of their pockets. We're doing it completely out of the savings of the project. So a couple of things, without going into our PowerPoint, a couple of things that the legislation allows us to do. One is no upfront cost. So we do these projects basically at our risk. We do it entirely on the savings of the project, meaning I can't come to this council, this board, and ask you for money. It's got to be done completely under the legislation, under the savings of the project. So this is our, sorry about that, Commissioner, but this is what our PowerPoint that we showed earlier.
Mm-hmm.
This is the city of, okay, there we go. We took direction from Ellis and Tracy, and we discussed some of the things that we could look at. So we threw buildings up there. Some of the things we can impact in these projects are buildings, lighting, safety and security, HVAC, roofs, water meters, water treatment, lakes, streets, water lines, sewer lines, anything that impacts the city, street lights. I don't even think we have that up there. Anything that impacts the city budgetarily, we can impact. We can positively impact. So some of these projects, or most of these projects, are economically development driven. So those are usually the start of the project. What ends is you get all new infrastructure with absolutely no tax increases or rate increases to pay for it. And this is done in thousands of places, schools, cities, higher ed, municipalities, this type of legislation. So has anybody ever heard of this type procurement before? Okay. He's zeroing in on something.
I'm just trying to make it bigger.
Okay, can everybody see that? So anyway, these are just basically how the projects work. You know, your revenues are usually flatline, maybe a little bit more if you raise rates or taxes lately, depending on water rates and your general fund. Resource demands are always escalating. What we try to do is we use this funding gap between your revenues and resource demands to fund projects. So what we'll do is we'll take a 30,000 foot look. Should I get the budget stress now? Let's go to the next one. What we do is we look at your budget stress. We look at all the projects in the city, take about 30,000 foot look, and try to develop something that we can all feel good about. So we will work with you collaboratively, look at everything in the city you want us to look at. We'll look at the savings involved, and then we'll figure out what the projects. So it's truly a collaborative process. Anything you want to add?
Just that ultimately what we're looking to do is identify, it's partly driven by the inefficiencies, whether they be energy driven, oil, gas, electricity, those inefficiencies, and tied to what deferred maintenance needs you might have. We use those inefficiencies to make upgrades throughout the city. And you mentioned the list can be very extensive as the things you can kind of touch with this. We also look at, both operationally, what are some of those inefficiencies, and maybe it's revenues that we could recapture. So like with water, you can collect a lot of revenue with that. what we do in the beginning of the process is really look at all of those things to try and see how big the bucket is. How much money on an annual basis are you sitting on that you're just essentially sending to your utility when you don't have to, not collecting on the water side because you can't, you don't have the right technologies to do so. We try to figure out how big the bucket is. What the legislation allows us to do is use those dollars in 1 year. We can go out 20 years. So if you take that number, kind of multiply it by 20, we can do that much work in year 1. And because of the way the legislation is written, ultimately, we don't have to do any kind of rate increase, tax increase, anything like that. We can monetize those inefficiencies in 1 year and make a big impact right up front. Most of the work we're going to do, all of the work we're going to do is all the work you probably already know you need to do. But those inefficiencies allow us to do it up front. And it also is one of those things where most of the time, especially with water involved, a project may cost $1, it may save $2. So ultimately what you're able to do is kind of front load all of the projects you want to do. You don't have to come out of pocket for them. The savings, you already got the money in your budget. So you're not asking for more. And then in addition, you can use those other dollars towards other things that you're really looking to do, whether that's drive economic development, make the park more good. You know, we mentioned examples of cities. Most of the time, they don't want to fix a boiler. So it's not exciting for the community. They want to do outreach programs. They want to do things for their community. It enables you to kind of take your budget and really stretch it a little further and do a heck of a lot more with it while beautifying and updating the infrastructure of your buildings. And so that's really what we look to do in the beginning of the process, to just kind of figure out what does that look like, and you know, what kind of buckets are we dealing with.
Mhm. Yeah, good point. You know, if you take a look at some of the technical difficulties. Okay, there we go. If you take a look at some of these projects, like I said, they all start with economic development, but they all end up beautifying the city, making the city a better place to live. So I've got a really good, you know, before and after picture of one of the projects we did in the town of about 6,400. We were able to monetize $38 million worth of work in the town of 6,400. That means over a 10-year period, 5 projects, 5 phases. This is basically Mount Vernon, Indiana, population 67. They were negative $1.3 million in their budget. We did $38 million in projects without a tax and rate increase. Anybody think that's too good to be true? It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's amazing. But I mean, we're doing this all over, right? I've been able to replicate this all over the place. You know, I was telling Tracy and Ellis earlier that, you know, the project in Evansville, Indiana, started off with a $10,000 wireless program that the mayor wanted wireless downtown because kids were coming home with laptops and tablets and their parents couldn't afford the internet. So he said, I'm going to put wireless down in the underserved area. So it started off with $10,000. Well, they didn't have the money. They were upside down in the budget. So he came to us, he says, can you find money in the operation? Yeah, we found over $100 million, did a $50 million project. We've got a wastewater treatment plant that literally runs on what goes into the wastewater treatment plant. And displaced $100,000 a month in gas and electric. They completely cut their electric feeds. Now they generate their own electricity and they generate their own heat. The gas, you know, like for truck stop, men's room, goes into the plant. It burns, it generates electricity. We capture the waste heat off the motors. We heat the plant. So now they no longer have to pay a gas company and electric company. They generate their own heat. It even goes, I mean, we go deep into that project. It does a lot of other things too. So the beauty of it is we operate under legislation, and that legislation allows you all to look at a project with no upfront costs. Doesn't cost you anything for us to look at it. You don't pay any upfront costs because the savings have to pay for the project. So savings and increased revenue pay for the project. Beauty of it, I know you've all sat here, engineering companies and construction companies come in here and they got change orders because you forgot to tell them something. In the legislation, there's no such thing as change orders. We cannot do change orders in these projects. The cost of money is an all-time low. A couple of things are in the legislation. One is we have to guarantee the output. We have to guarantee the outcome of your project. You don't sign off until you're happy, so there's no change orders. Savings are guaranteed. So we have to guarantee by law, and we're checked by the federal and the state. They check our savings every year, once a year, measure and verify those savings that you're actually getting it, that they're there to pay for the project. So keep in mind, I can't ask you guys for any money. It has to be done entirely on the benefits of the project. Any questions so far?
Yes, you said something about the youth, you just saying the youth. I don't know,
Yeah.
you said that at the beginning.
Yep. Well, we've been able to fund all types of projects off these. There's usually excess savings. What we're usually looking at about 20% cushion there. And we use a lot of those savings to fund different initiatives. It's funny, when we start with these projects, first thing we look at is what can we do by infrastructure. Well, most of the stuff we do can't be seen. I mean, water meters, not big. You can't hang your head on a water meter. There's no excitement to it. HVAC or rooftop units, you can't hang your head on. So what are you going to do? Well, what you're going to do is you're going to derate those savings by 20% and look at that. I mean, we're just got St. Joe Library. We're putting in VR goggles, 30 sets of them for the youth, so they can come in there and they can find something other than, being out at night doing things. They can sit there and play games against each other and all kinds of stuff. These are some of the outcomes that we're looking for. So anyway, hundreds of organizations in Michigan are already doing these projects. Like I said, there's a couple of them right down the way, St. Joe County, St. Joe Public Library. The thing is none of these communities have any money. They just don't have money to upgrade the infrastructure. So what we're doing is we're bringing that to the table. Sometimes, we can go out and look at different areas of funding. Sometimes we can bring our own money to the table as an investment in the community. So those are some of the things that we look at when we're looking at a project. Scott, anything you want to add?
Not too bad. I know we're pushing up on the time.
Yeah, we don't want to keep you here all night. See, these are some of the cities that we do. You probably recognize a lot of them: Kalamazoo, Detroit, Madison Heights.
Let's see, man.
Yeah. One of this, they talked about the next step. The next step would be identifying projects.
Okay.
And we sat here and identified about 7, starting with this building, the 200 Pawpaw, the Armory, Public Works Building, the water plant, and then we can go into the school district and maybe do something with the school district. So we want to bring back a presentation, have them bring back a presentation for the commission based on some observations that they made. So rather than have them come out and do this, I wanted to show it tonight to your committee, and then want to give them an opportunity to take one of our projects and look at the bills and then come back with some figures on how they're savings.
That's what we like to do in the beginning is just, in this case, a snapshot of some of the potential. We look at utility bills and we call it the 30,000 foot view, but we walk the facilities. We also tie, what uses energy out in the building. We look at opportunities to save money. We kind of quantify, at a high level, what that looks like to kind of put some facts behind a pie in the sky idea. We like to begin to identify how big the bucket is for you. And so the offer, tonight is, the ask would be, could we be allowed to come back and provide you that information?
At no cost.
Yeah. So.
Dr. Tom?
Yes, I'm in between Lansing and Detroit. I'm a professor at Wayne State University School of Medicine. And I used to be involved with the city of Detroit under Coleman Young. So I would like, as a reference, I can review you mentioned that you've worked with the city of Detroit and with Wayne State.
Mhm.
So can you identify what you did with those projects, or I can mention them by name to like President Ward Wilson or just trying to find out some information from your presentation.
At both, I could tell you, so our company, if we were to throw up the big, who is ABM, it's kind of like the biggest company you've probably never heard of. In both of those instances, we have done project-based work where we may have replaced the boiler or done some service work. We have a lot of different business units. We also are actually probably the janitors and the operational staff in those communities. So I will be able to answer that question for you more specifically about what actually we've done. But most of the time, we are actually kind of we're the operations and maintenance teams for those colleges or communities. That's the bulk of what we do, is operate buildings for people. So I will get you that information. I'll find out exactly what we did there. But to this slide, we've got at this point nearly 3,000 employees in the state of Michigan that do a lot of those things. So we have the project-based units, and then we also literally staff and operate those buildings for some of those communities, colleges, and cities. So I'll find out what exactly it is that we did there, though.
Yeah, we'll get you some contact information too.
And he's holding back on you. What are your big projects?
Big projects?
Atlanta Airport?
Atlanta Airport, City of Chicago, we run everything. We've got 2,500 employees in the City of Chicago. We do everything from maintaining the buildings, cleaning the buildings, doing the landscape, anything that doesn't have to do with anything legislatively. In Chicago, we run. As a matter of fact, when I'm wearing my ABM shirt, you don't have one either. We're dressed up today. So anyway, when we're wearing our ABM shirt, we're walking down the street, you see tons of people with ABM shirts, and you don't know who they are. Well, this could be parking, this could be, maintenance, are all over the City of Chicago in some way or another. So we do a lot of, I think, 90 of the top 100 airports in the country. So you'll see us all over the place. So it's amazing how much work we do.
We're talking about the infamous one in Atlanta.
No, we're not going to talk about that. So anyway, so what's the solution? Okay, these projects legislatively, again, I'll reiterate that we don't ask for any money in the concept call. That's basically we're going to look at your facility and let you know whether or not there's a project here. It's a 30,000-foot look. It's done entirely at our risk. Okay, in most cases there is a project. Some cases, like Auburn Hills, we mentioned earlier, it's too new a city, couldn't do a thing there. Couldn't find a project. This stuff was brand new. The city's only been chartered since '83. Everything was new. So we couldn't find a project there. Second is IGA. We can go through that. Investment grade audit. That's when we as a collaborative, these are off ramps. Concept is, do we have a project? We do a presentation. This is what we think based on the information you gave us of what the project could look like and how it could be funded. Okay, now you decide as a board whether or not you want to go forward with it. Okay, it's an off ramp. And if you say, yeah, I think there's a lot of potential here, let's go and actually quantify it. The second phase right there is building a baseline. And that baseline is the financial guarantee we give you that the dollars are going to be there to pay for the project. So we establish a baseline. That means we actually measure and verify. We put light meters on your lights if we're doing that. We put stuff on your HVAC for run times and, so water meters. We pull water meters and test them. I mean, depending on what you want us to look at, we do a very thorough job because we have to guarantee that baseline. So that's the second phase, IGA. You still haven't wrote a check yet to us. Okay? The IGA presentation, we presented to you. That's another off ramp. Do you want to go forward or not? Okay? You could say, well, we don't want to go forward, shake hands, and we can walk away. Again, no money out of pocket. Scope selection, we can also look at everything in the city. And you can choose, it takes about an hour, you can choose what projects you want. It'll have savings and costs. We bid it out for you. Savings, costs, return on investment, all of it. And you check on, check off. And we can play with it. It's fun to play with. You know, you can go ahead and build your project. You build your project, you build the cost, you build who you want to deal with. So you want to deal with Merle down there who you've been dealing with forever? We put Merle in there, but we check his price. Just make sure we're getting a good deal. So scope selection, then funding and financing, you still haven't written the check yet. Contract startup, okay, we go ahead, we install everything. There's no payment through the construction period, none. In fact, you don't start paying until after construction period. That's another check and balance. We're not gonna come back and get you because we don't get paid until you sign off and say you're happy. I can't come back and say, Mr. Ison, you didn't tell me about this, so I need a change order. No, we need change orders. There's no such thing as change orders in this project. We have to be, our engineering's gotta be spot on for no change orders. So you sign off, you're happy. That's why we have 100% referral, because if you're not happy, you don't sign off, we don't get paid. So the next year, those savings build up by statute, by law. Those savings build up, and you pay us out of those savings. So all the risk, 100% of the risk is on this company, 100%. So the first, I guess, the first authorization, first ask is, do you want us to take a look and just give you a 30,000 foot look on your stuff?
City manager, yes, so you had, one, you just gonna pick a project, one of these, or all of them?
I think we'll have to look at priority. And right now, the water plant seems to be the big priority. The one thing that we didn't mention is there can also do infrastructure changes too. So that, we'll get together and talk about which one we want, let you know.
Priority be the water plant.
That probably will be the one.
Have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The question I have, going with your expertise, you already mentioned that you actually, we can choose, but you can also do a survey analysis, basically what you're saying, and can give some recommendations, or we can tell you what we would like. The Honorable Chair, one of the things I would ask that maybe these individuals with this amount of experience coverage that we think about considering, let them do peruse of what they think that might be a benefit, and then if they also agree that it's a water plant, but they're not saying it's gonna make any difference financially, if they just look at one project or look at us as a whole and say, okay, these are where I think would be some projects that we can do. And I don't want to tie their hands and limit them and narrow their focus. I'd rather them to take an open look and then say, hey, these are where we see that we can help you. I mean, yes, the water plant is there, but that's us limiting the scope of the lens that they look at. So I would let them, if possible, do a panoramic view and then give recommendations. Is that possible, sir?
It is possible, yes.
Thank you.
We can do City Hall, the Armory, have a whole scope.
Everything.
Any questions? Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Adams?
Commissioner Adams, how you doing?
Hi, how you doing?
I came in on the last end, but I think I heard the concept and listening. I know. Stop. I guess I can, I talk loud enough, got a natural microphone. If in fact, I think I came in on the tail end of you explaining the concept of what you actually do. And there's no charge for you to look at those assets throughout the city, which is good. Are you considered a resource? You would be a resource, or do you provide resources, or you do an assessment and come back with projected costs of a project?
Yes, when we look at the concept, it's basically, is there a project here or not?
Okay.
The IG authorization is us doing a deep dive into your facilities
Okay.
and actually establishing a baseline and a
Okay.
project list. But we work collaboratively with you all.
Mhm.
So this isn't done us coming in telling you what to do, it's
Right,
us
right, right.
working together.
As a partnership, I
Right.
got that portion. My question would be, because I have a grave concern about, the city residents passing a city income tax to fix our streets. And we have recently okayed, I think, $15 million for the infrastructure. And we've started the process of putting a Band-Aid on top of something that needs to be fixed underneath. And it doesn't make sense to continue, though we must fill some of the holes because they're turned into craters, which will in turn into, you know what comes next.
Yep.
So to look at something like that and see what would be feasible as to where the work of the infrastructure should start before a complete street and curbs and stuff take place. So you would actually do something like that through the chair?
We would.
Oh, okay,
Then you take a look at all your assets.
okay.
To answer, and I was gonna comment on this, we start with taking a look at pretty much anything in any building you ask us to that uses gas, water, and electricity. And also what operationally it costs to run those, so what manpower it takes to upkeep those things. So we start with that purview and we identify our first, we call it capital generation. How much capital can you generate from within your buildings, within your existing budget? Then to your point, what we do is we say, here's, I can call it the bucket of money, maybe it's a pot of gold, whatever, however you want to view it. But we know then kind of what the funding mechanism is and how big it is. Then we look to you to say, where would you put this money? So some of the projects must be done to generate some of those savings or the revenue from water meters, things like that. But as far as what you do with those dollars, it's very common, especially when the water is included, to have additional funding. More funding than there is cost to actually implement the upgrades. With that, we look to you guys to tell us what are those most important things and where would you like to put those dollars? I had a conversation a little while ago when we were talking about a small community in Fairfield, Illinois. They have they fund about $250,000 in street upgrades a year. They want to put murals downtown. They want to beautify a park. Those are all things that end up coming into our project based on, again, that cost and savings portion, and also continuously telling and working with the community to figure out what are those other priority things. It could be anything that you can think of, but ultimately, it typically turns from what do we do to fix the infrastructure, how much savings does that generate, and then what do we do with the excess, and how do we, put those funds, what resources do we put them towards?
That's wonderful to hear you say that because I just had someone ask me about actually donating a big, large, beautiful mural and a basketball court to the city of Benton Harbor to clean up some property. I mean, at no cost to the city though. To do something like that, that's wonderful. But I would agree with our city manager through the chair that our drinking water source would be the number one priority. And I just wanted to know if in fact you did something like the infrastructure and the thing you already have going on. Thank you.
Commissioner.
We hope to complement whatever you have going on and not derail it, but maybe add to it.
But it still comes back to our budget.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming. Thank you, Karen Ison, for coming from Alliance.
Mr. Ison.
Thank you.
What was
Thank you.
your name?
Sorry we went off. Forgot me.
No, it's good.
Yeah, just a little bit longer.
See you when you come back.
Oh,
Thanks.
Oh, you're local? You got a guy local? That's why they're here, we bring them in when we find these kind of things going on. We do some of the work and they do a lot of the work.
Contact information, we'll go ahead and get the right state. City of Detroit.
Point of order. The next thing on the agenda. Just give it to the. Next thing on the agenda, we have the matrix report. Matrix report.
Everyone should have a copy of the financial report that was done by the finance department. Do you have any questions?
So we 59% complete of the budget.
That's correct.
We don't have a power. All right.
Pension.
We did that. Oh,
Which one? She's someone that can ask questions. Any questions from the,
Any questions about what?
you on the metrics report? You get,
I don't have any of that information. Can I ask questions?
Just ask one question, city manager. So, the city income tax admin, why is so, is that 564%, what that?
I'm sorry. What was the question?
Oh, the city income tax admin, what is that 564% on page 7, before the third slot down? Because money that went out.
Yeah, that's because it has gone out, but it has not come in.
Oh, okay.
where are you?
You looked at this.
Right, for that basically because, she haven't transferred any money from the city income tax into the right pool of monies for the admin.
Mhm.
So it's there, it just hasn't been apportioned correctly, like transferred.
Allocated.
Right.
Question, Madam Chair,
Third time.
for the community, we've always done the presentation, so they'll be able to follow along. Is there an audiovisual problem, or we're not able to, have the citizens, chime in on this? This is a question.
Yes, we were working on that, we just didn't have it tonight. But down the road, we should be having a PowerPoint, in the near future.
So
Thank you.
we're not involved today, we're gonna wait to the future.
Well,
Thank you.
Shame.
So I'm gonna sit here, I don't have nothing. No, I want my own.
I can tell you this, that we 59% complete in the budget.
Repeat.
City manager, we started on a new budget.
We're beginning.
Point of order. Point of order. Yeah, come to the mic. Come on. Mr. Duncan.
Can I demand some paperwork? I'm a citizen. I come to this meeting and I don't want yours either.
See, that's why I was asking.
See, I asked this a long time ago, so why am I here again?
Okay, we're gonna work on that, the PowerPoint. Thank you, Mr. Duncan, for being a loyal citizen.
Your question was, Mr. Chairman, what was your question?
The budget.
For your information, the chair is asking if we started the budget. The budget documents are being prepared to go out to the department heads. All of the department heads will be involved in the budget preparation. And they will go through a tutorial with the finance director. And once we get the budget to a form, we will be presenting, we want to make presentations of at least one in each ward. Wherever the ward commissioners decide you want to have. We want the people to be able to be involved in that presentation.
Commissioner Adams.
Yes, Chair, I heard city manager say that, all department heads would get with the finance director. We don't have one, we're still dealing with a firm.
We have a finance director. You don't, evidently, you don't want to
You
be. We have,
know where I'm going,
we have
through the chair.
We have a finance director.
through the chair.
Thank you.
You know what I'm requesting, and I would ask, the chair, that you would have the documentation sent to our new city manager that the commission passed upon sending forth an RFP for a finance director.
Thank you.
Don't
Commissioner Henry.
be cursing.
Any more questions about the book, the metrics? Thank you. Next thing on the agenda, we have personnel update.
Have a couple of things, the commission soon, probably when I get out of this meeting, I will be receiving an email in regards of the senior PGA agreement, like a draft copy with the changes and corrections, and asking for input as far as any suggestions or change of language, because since the PGA is coming up pretty quickly, we probably do need to go ahead and vote on the agreement as soon as possible. So I will be sending an email out later this evening.
A draft copy of it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Just so you know, the PGA involvement with the city is in
Point of order.
the PGA
Make
in,
nobody stop talking back here. Okay?
City man.
the PGA involvement with the city is in two phases. One is working with the police department, and the police department is has been laying out their plan on how to go about providing safety and police services during the event. And the other part is the part that we have in the agreement here. One part is with the PGA and the other part is not with the PGA. This part is not with the PGA. But we'll be giving you some more details on that.
When the PGA starts, through the chair.
You know, as I stated, that an email will be going out later this evening when I leave this meeting, to all the commissioners as a draft copy.
I'm sorry.
Clerk,
I know,
Commissioner Adams.
I'm just laughing out loud because I had well, not actually a conversation, but an email exchange with a young man that was here. And some of us know what we're dealing with when it comes to asking for what we want, and we've always had things come to us in like a binder from those that have been controlling this community in the last hour and expecting for us to vote on something. And we're not practicing or doing business like that anymore. And for us not to have heard something from the gentleman, I was at least expecting an answer to a question that I asked him that has something similar to do with the gentleman that just left and did a presentation. Now, you know where I'm going. I'm gonna keep coming around to Manchester Bidwell, because that's something that our school and some of the young parents that are not educated, don't have an interest in going to the college. And not only that, for a smaller fee, for them to do what they need to come here and do, they equip us with resources that make sure that things work and do not fail. And I have not heard an answer. I've even asked Jeff Knowles. I expect an answer, because the community still cries and thinks that we just give and give and give. And the last thing that we need is for this PGA to be picketed or anything negative, to shed any negative light on Benton Harbor. Okay, well, you get a chance to talk, okay? You will get a chance to talk.
Okay, Mayor, Commissioner.
The last thing we need, and upon my conversation with the gentleman that sat here, is that I explained to him that this is a perfect opportunity for them to actually show this community, since the monies that were donated over the course of several years, from the 200,000, 350,000, or whatever, was dismantled and rerouted somewhere else, that if they really had an interest in helping this community economically or any other way, that would be an opportunity for them to speak up, step up, speak up, and say something, talk to this community, and gain their trust, and that you care about them, and not just coming in here, getting a little white ball and having your fun. It's a problem though, when you got the flow, you want your respect and demand it.
Don't.
Oh, I do.
Keep talking, Commissioner. Keep talking.
But anyway, I hope that, because I did I suggested the young gentleman do let our city manager and us know in a timely enough manner, because I think that the next time, just like now when the PGA came up, that we should have an answer. It's not that hard, but we should have an answer. And if whatever they're going to give, if they're not going to do that, making an investment in education within this community, that they should pay up front, so that maybe we can get an entertainer in here and have a Sunday event out at the park and try to raise some money ourselves or something. Give back to the community. We always asking them for something. It's time we give back. Well, time for somebody to do it. Or they're gonna watch the water rise higher and higher.
Mr. Chair, we've asked several times for any suggestions that we can put into the draft. So we put together a draft, and if you want to put anything in it, please do so we can see it and present it back to the body.
Thank you, sir.
Did we get that in the email, Chair?
Yes.
When?
I
After,
right
after this meeting,
Right,
okay.
yes.
So I have to resubmit that? Well, I guess I can copy and paste it. Okay, but, while we're talking finances,
No, we're talking about personnel, right now.
oh, okay, we on personnel,
Continue, Ms. Dunn.
okay.
You finished?
Just a reminder that the retreat,
Uh-huh.
we do have dates, which is April the 17th and 18th.
April 17th.
17th and 18th. I did get consensus on all of the commission, with the exception of one person. However, we're going through the agenda as of right now, but just wanted to make you aware of the dates, which is April the 17th and 18th. However, we will be having a dinner that Thursday night, which is the 16th, correct, right before the, yes, ma'am, for the retreat.
Cool.
That's it.
And I want you to know that it is chock full of information and opportunity to ask and get answers to any of your questions. And the people you need to get those answers from will be there.
Okay.
Thanks.
Will that include, through the chair, people like the gentleman we met last night, like our new superintendent, and those people are invited?
The people who you need to get answers will be there.
Thank you.
I'm asking because I need, I have so much going on, y'all gotta forgive me. I really need, if through the chair, Miss Lisa can, Ms. Galladay can send us that date again, resend that email, and I need to let you guys know why. The, superintendent and what, never mind, this probably isn't a good time. Okay.
Time.
Yeah, I'm the chair. Two things, personnel. One, is it possible to have Manchester Bidwell come back and do another presentation? You have a new city manager, some new members to update so we can address that issue that the Commissioner Adams.
No, don't worry about that, I got this. Don't worry about it.
I'm having to do a formal presentation. The second part, in terms of personnel, we had several inquiries from the last meeting into looking at, it was talked about, they were going to be researching, from what I understand, the hiring since, the city managers, emergency manager coming up today, looking at the F-100 forms and making sure that our hiring practices are in line with the charter. That was the assignment last month's meeting, and that should be, I would think, fall under personnel and finance right now.
Can you repeat that? Because,
Okay, so last month, was asked about, in terms of personnel, that you were saying those hired, you took notes, that to make sure that our hiring was in line with the charter, because there was several things on the floor in terms of making sure that several positions were filled by employees, because there was a thought that some were not in line with charter, that they were contractors or companies and stuff in which the charter doesn't allow in certain situations. But I know there was an exception in terms of accounting, using Plant Moran, and then the issue of the attorney, the assessor, those things are supposed to be looked at. If you go back to your notes from last month.
It's on the agenda last year.
It was already done.
you're talking about in request to your
Seats.
Yeah, it's next on the agenda.
Oh, it is, okay, this is,
Not next, but
Fourth item.
No, it's already been completed and sent out.
okay, so I'm seeing metrics, personnel update, resolution, discussion discussion city employees, that's the one, okay. So, thank you, I'm sorry.
Mr. Henry. Yeah. Oh, okay.
I think we have one more item.
Okay, we have a resolution. Oh, I'm sorry.
Pictures.
Look at that.
Yes, it was yesterday, however, since it was a very minimum, turnout for the picture taken, you have like 2 weeks to contact Tucker Photography to schedule an appointment. And you can go to the office and I can send out that permission as well. Go to his office and take your photos at your convenience. It just have to be, you have to contact him directly to schedule an appointment.
Question, do they still have the picture from last year?
I believe so, because I believe you took it, yeah.
Can I call them and tell them to use that? Thank you. Commissioner,
I guess my question would be, how did Tucker get the terrific job of taking photos? Did the RFP go out for that?
This was already paid for a couple of years ago.
Oh,
So this been in the making. We just been having problems getting the photos actually
okay,
taken.
because I think that was a
So-
question even then. I mean, and you probably were the one overseeing the chair, but, okay,
Yeah, so it's already paid for. We just need the project
okay.
completed.
make sure everybody get out and take their photo.
Yeah.
Did you know?
Oh, you did?
Commissioner Henry,
I tried.
get your photo.
Okay,
Thank you, Commissioner.
thank you.
I was out of town. I didn't know.
I sent out an email.
That's it. Thank you, Ms. Donovan. Next, we have resolution approval of the contract agreement for a labor attorney. Ms. Donovan.
So through the commission, I was asked to fill out RFP for legal services for like our labor contract, our labor attorney, which we did that. So the RFPs was, all the proposals was due in on the 12th. 2 came in, so therefore it would be, we wanted to discuss it tonight, so it can come forward to the commission on March the 2nd for approval.
Who,
Are there interviews?
the 2 names?
The 2 names is Keller Tama Law Firm as well as the Sanders Law Firm,
Same, okay.
both out of like in the Detroit area. One is from Southfield and one is actually in Detroit, Michigan. No, the Sanders Law Firm is in Detroit. Keller Tama is in Southfield.
What about the rates?
Rate for Keller Tama is $175 an hour, and the rate for Sanders Law Firm is, I think it was like almost $250 an hour. And this is only for the labor, our labor attorney.
Just when needed.
Yes, when needed for arbitration, negotiation, things of that sort for our contract labor
For FOP.
FOP,
Okay.
which is the police fire.
I just one question.
Oh, Commissioner.
I don't think I heard her fully, but are those going to be interviews for the position itself? We get to ask questions, or what does that look like?
See now.
Those are the only 2 applications, the 2 only
Yes, we,
proposals?
correct, 2 proposals that we did receive and
Okay.
And yes, you can always ask questions.
I mean, will they come before the commission and interview?
Well, yes,
Okay,
we did an RFP
right,
and we'll bring them before the commission.
okay. Thank you.
Dr. Time.
Yeah, Honorable Chair, so the question is, okay, so this is a precise assignment where it's for the labor that deals with the Fraternal Police. And so it deals with negotiation of labor, any disputes in that way. So there would be coming out of the Detroit area, and the criteria to determine who's who are are they similarly balanced? Honorable Chair, this could relate to the city, could be for the city manager. Are they equally balanced in terms of the services they're going to be providing, since there's a difference in the cost? And then the other issue would be relating to the, I wanted, for clarity, how many type of attorneys does the city have? So I know this is for labor, and then I know there's one if there's a suit in terms of the city being in litigation. And I know there's sometimes there's an attorney who's fully attorney that the commissioners ask, so I'm trying to see how many type of attorneys do the city have, and what's the difference between these two proposals, that are they providing equal service, because there's a difference in the cost.
They both had the same RFP.
So they responded equally to what the criteria was set.
That's correct.
Okay, just the different prices. And whether the committee or you reviewed in terms of their track record experience, is that being done through you, or the committee's going to review that?
We've done that.
Okay.
Yes.
You wanna know how many lawyers, the number of lawyers we had, attorneys, I mean.
The number.
I believe where the confusion might come in, like we have litigations, our insurance company actually will hire an attorney for us to litigate certain items. So that's where like the different attorneys actually come in to play. We've always had a different labor attorney for the FOP. The attorney that was currently here, he was hired, well, he wasn't even hired. He was working without a contract. So therefore, we needed to do it correctly and have an attorney with a contract that went through the RFP, the whole process correctly. So that's why we are going through this now.
Okay, that explains too. So right, one for the insurance for litigations, two, the one for the labor for the FOP, and then you kind of got me confused. So there's an RFP that went out to provide a new city attorney?
No, that's the labor attorney we're referring to.
Right, but then you said so there's a city attorney as well.
There's a city attorney, yes.
Right, because the city attorney was the one was working without a contract.
No, that's not
No.
correct.
Was it?
The labor.
The labor attorney.
Well, there was one that came up to the resolution where the 6 months, whatever that thing.
No, we talking about this right now.
Okay, all right, I'm just was trying to get the handle on the number of attorneys and who's who.
City manager, I have a question. Is it possible we can look at the resume?
Already
The some-
The
the
RFP.
RFP.
There's always a separate.
Thank you, Commissioner Henry.
When this subject first came up, the city manager made a recommendation. Did that firm apply?
Yes, they did.
So it's one of these, is that firm?
Yes.
You're happy then, huh?
Yes, I am happy.
Okay, good.
I'm a happy man.
Good, good.
So I think we got a good one.
Go Commissioner Adams. Thank you. Commissioner Adams.
Can we get that information and start going over it?
Yeah, don't send it to me.
And
Review, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna let you move forward because it may be in the next discussion, but it had something to do with, the confusion that Dr. Times just put in my mind about the other city attorney,
All right.
RFP or what have you. Okay,
All right.
thank you, sir.
All right, we're gonna move on. On the next on the agenda, we have, discussion, city employees. Commissioner Henry, you might want to sit there. City employees.
I was just getting my paperwork.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but while she's getting her paperwork, that question that I just asked,
City
through the chair,
employees.
no, other city attorneys. Are we moving forward with the RFP that was supposed to go out after giving them the 60-day notice?
We'll look into that.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Adams, we'll look into that. We talking about the labor attorney right now.
Oh, no, I thought we had moved on to the next item. I'm sorry, I thought that's what I heard you
Just gonna
say.
change the item commission. I didn't, I thought he did.
Yeah, we on city employees now.
Okay.
Well, that falls underneath it.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Right, I'm sorry.
See, y'all ain't gonna, not tonight,
Telling me.
not tonight.
Of course, you know that the charter says we have to inquire about things, and so my question came up about who was hired during that period of time that we was not getting a whole lot of information about. And in that conversation came up, we saw that there was quite a few people hired that we didn't know about or that we didn't. And the question came up, was there any contracts? Found out there was none with the contract, but one, and that was our inspection, from inspection department. So, it's one thing that I know about my city is if somebody gives you a rumor, there's always some part of that rumor is true. They might not have it all together, but it's true. So when I started asking questions about the employees and didn't get the right answer from our former city manager, I wanted to get that information to share with us so we could talk about it.
You ready? You got yourself together there?
Make sure you get some tabs.
Girl, please.
Oh,
I gave you some information. There was job descriptions there.
Yeah, I didn't.
And truly, when I started going through the job description, they did not match the job because most of our employees is doing double duty. And so the job descriptions are definitely not matching with what our loyal employees are working on. But I'm glad you put it here so we could have the city manager really pay attention to some of these.
Okay, I'm gonna let Dr. Time.
Yeah, I think while she's doing that, I think we're gonna address those issues, but I was wondering, is there a presentation from the through the chair of the city manager or from personnel, to address the question I'm gonna try to research, but just for clarity, trying to figure out, about the lawyer situation, about the assessor situation, about, so it was the lawyer, the assessor, the duration of plant rent, it was, those, looking at F-100 forms or applications about who was hired, those things. I think she's looking for that to get those going. Is there a presentation that could just be presented, or we have to engage back and forth on questions? That's one question I want to share.
If we're going to go in any personnel matters, I request that that's done in closed session.
Okay.
I just have a question, because I think you asked a question about the assessor, but just based on our charter, because you did quote the charter
Right.
on page 29. It says, shall appoint assessor, it says section 9.1, for the purpose of making the assessment of the property of the city, the commission shall appoint, subject to removal, an assessor and shall provide for his compensation. The assessor shall possess all the powers vested in and be charged with all the duties imposed upon assessing officers by the general laws of the state. On completing the assessment roll, the assessor shall sign and transmit the same to the city clerk for consideration by the board of review. That's it. So, because you said that the charter says that we can't have a company, but that, it doesn't say that.
No, I think I've seen,
That's what the charter says about the assessment. I'll let you see my charter.
yeah,
Let you read through it, and-
yeah, because I have.
But that's the only thing that the commission shall provide for one.
Let me see.
Sorry. And that's the only requirement from the city. They can be, or do whatever.
Yeah, I just wanted to have this so the city manager can really dig into about the hires that got hired, last year, 2019. There were several of them, and when I looked at the qualifications, there was some very shady areas of how these people got hired. And if the rumor is, if any of the rumor is true, the city manager really needs to look into it. And, with the fact that we were really looking to grow some departments, I think this is the time to start looking at the staff that we have, and if it's, staff that we need. Because I personally like to see some departments grow. It's the only way we're gonna supply our citizens with better services if we have more people to service them. So, you got this information. I don't know if you got a chance to look at it or not.
Can you, so is people hired within?
In the year 2019, there were several. I'm not counting the people at Gene Clark Park, because that hiring process was definitely flawed, and it's been flawed since they started hiring people. They keep hiring the same people over and over, and when I see double names, family members, I'm just assuming they might not be, but I'm not counting the Gene Clark Park, but I'm only counting the ones that were hired, and there was 3 or 4, maybe, 3 or 4 of them that really need some attention. Your attention should be looked at.
Could you mark them and submit them to the city manager? Red flag them or something?
That's your job.
I don't.
You the chair.
Well, we'll get together.
You
then.
got the information.
No,
I gave you
my laptop went down. I told you I didn't.
Oh, your laptop went down.
Can you give me a copy?
You don't have your phone?
I'm
You didn't get your new
I'm trying to print off of it. I couldn't print.
Okay,
I'm printing.
okay.
We
You
gonna-
have a
we gonna collaborate.
printer in your office over here. Do you have a key to that office?
Sure, we'll get, I tell you what, maybe we'll get together and we'll,
Kick this ball down.
no, we'll go through it this weekend. How's that?
Or kick it down, kick it down the road a little bit more.
Well, you can.
Kick it over the weekend.
I really want the city
Yeah.
manager, the new city manager, to know what happened that last year, that he needs to see who the players are. He'll get it to you.
Okay, well,
And,
We gonna,
and have a conversation through this body of the departments that really need to be increased some kind of way. And my first thought is public works. And we really have to look at public works and some of our loyal employees there and see what we can do to enhance that department.
We're
Mr. Manager.
we're moving into the budget cycle right now. So everything is on the table in the budget cycle. We'll be looking at.
okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Henry.
Thank you.
We'll be collaborating together.
I would really like through the chair to collaborate on what Commissioner Henry just spoke on. Because it's something that we've been talking about for several years now. And I think I just spoke on it within the last couple of months as well. And even before this racial equity thing came up. These different committees should play a larger part, being the people's elected in whatever that committee is, like finances. Wherever there's problems and issues and things need to be, somebody within this committee should be more involved in that departmental decision-making. But I'm going to just speak, being the economic development co-chair on that level, because when it comes to the youth jobs and stuff over the years, all I've heard is unfairness. Which is why I think that that's one main department that needs to be increased in some type of equity, sustainable manner, to where the chair, co-chair, a couple of residents or what have you, when we look at the budget, to increase that department, to make greater things happen and have better control of the decision-making as to who's running what and who's hiring who or whom. That really needs to happen. And not to take away from our community economic development director, but maybe we need, think about an added position as not just a director, but, I'm going to have it put on the next agenda for planning economic development, and we'll discuss it further because we're running out of time here, and I'm not gonna hold you up.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams.
Thank you.
Thank you for the good meeting. Thanks everybody for coming. Meeting adjourned. We will be interviewing at 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock.
Fifteen minutes. Better go to a house party.
Our last story I'm trying to understand. If you're playing for like you're. Yeah, I'm
Good job. Yeah, we have 4.
It's not recording now, but it is. I bet it is. It's still on. But congratulations. Congratulations. I think it better be. I just, I don't know. I'm a magician. But I'm managing something else. Something got a problem with my style, but it's mine. It's mine. I ain't trying to be like nobody else. That's right. Read all that.